Well, Sue, I asked you to be on the program with me to talk a little bit about the Blessed Virgin Mary, and in this case, especially the apparition of Mary at Lourdes. And I've done that because you have such a special feel for the Blessed Virgin Mary and for that devotion, and have talked well on that topic. And so I also know that you were at Lourdes at one time, and so I think that as we begin to look at that, we're talking generally about the apparitions of Mary, and Lourdes is certainly a highlight in all of that, a special one. And before I launch into getting sort of your own personal feel for it, let's just remind ourselves of what we're talking about here. This is I think it takes us back. It takes us back to the 19th century, 1858, I believe it was, when these visions began.
Right. With
a young girl by the name of Bernadette. I guess she would be one of the more famous of the visionaries. We have visionaries from La Salette. We have Melanie and Maximin there, and we have this Bernadette at Lourdes, and she would probably be one of the best known. We've had movies about it and so on, so people would recognize this. There's a lot of people who have been to Lourdes and partaken of that experience, and Bernadette became well known in a number of different ways. So we're just to locate ourselves a little bit historically, and then maybe with just that much background, you might tell me a little bit about your own sense of Lourdes and when you went there and so on.
Okay. I think Lourdes is probably the best known and most studied of all of the modern Marian apparitions, and I did see the movie Bernadette. I just watched it twice, as a matter of fact. And
recently?
Yes,
really?
Just a couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact. And this dear woman was a very...
Was that the very title of the movie?
Bernadette, simply Bernadette,
yeah, okay.
Yes. She was a very ill person. I mean, she had a very bad cough, asthma. The family was a poverty-stricken group. And again, you kind of wonder, the choice of Mary out of all of the millions of possibilities, she dipped down and touched this dear woman here, too. Did you want to hear about my trip to Lourdes?
Yeah, just tell me a little bit about it. What
briefly.
Happened,
In August of 1991, I was with 45 other Dominican sisters and priests. We were tracing the footsteps of St. Dominic from Spain to France to Italy, and we spent a privileged pause at Lourdes. It was about 24 hours, and it truly is a place of pilgrimage. The Basilica area is right off the business district. So you leave the shops with thousands of souvenirs, and of course you can sometimes get a little rattled about it, but I found myself gentle.
You mean in terms of all this commercialism surrounding it? The commercialism,
yes. Right. But it is a means of labor for the people, and it is mementos of remembrance that are taken home. I even brought some of the special Lourdes water that I got right from the spigot there to be present with us right now today. But the whole basilica has the chapels, the grotto, the confessionals, the baths, and what started off very, very tiny on February 11th of 1858. That's 135 years ago. Now 4 to 5 million people come there every year for strength.
That's amazing.
For healing, for reconciliation. And as we arrived, there was a procession going on, the Corpus Christi procession, and no one tells you to be quiet, but there's a hushed spirit. Despite the throngs of people, whisper seems to be the appropriate.
I remember that myself. I was there many years ago. I'm thinking in 1960, although I'm not actually sure of that, but I think that is when I was there. And I remember that some of that same phenomenon you're talking about, the early things of walking down towards the shrine and passing all these commercial enterprises and getting quite turned off by that, but then moving into the area of the shrine itself, and then when the procession, the calmness and peace. That's probably one of my strongest remembrances of it also.
It is a holy ground. It really is. It's made sacred not only by what happened in 1858, but what's happening in 1993 as well, as we keep that dream alive. Probably the most startling and special moments, Jim, is the nightly rosary procession. You get your candles with a little paper around it so they don't go out, and you walk around the grounds, and the beauty. The rosary is prayed in several languages. If you ever want to have a solidarity of the Catholicity of the church, the universality of it. It is praying the rosary. And the particular night we were there was a threat of rain. And I remember in my head saying, now, Mary, are you going to perform a miracle and hold this rain off until the end? Well, we did get through, and it did rain after, so I'm not going to call that a miracle. But we also sing the Lourdes hymn. And instead of Ave, Ave, they go Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, and so on. Not too far away from the actual grotto, they have places where you can...
When you say actual grotto, this is the place where Mary appeared to Bernadette
Soubirous.
Right.
That's right. And they have connected spigots of water connected to the miraculous springs. And right above them, there is a sign in 7 languages. It says, just like Bernadette, wash your face and pray to God to cleanse your soul. And people bring bottles and jugs and fill this to take this home for healing, for holy water and the like. And there are masses that occur there indoors and outdoors. When the mass is not going on, people walk by the grotto and the rock is smoothed by the hands of the people who've touched it. So, and one other aspect there that really was memorable, the rivers that go through, the baths that they have curative powers. And people are daily brought on stretchers and wheelchairs. And all I can say is that healing occurs in various ways. I will always be grateful for that pause.
Mm-hmm.
It's touched me, and it continues to strengthen me even this much time later.
What was that? How many people did you say went there in a year's time? It's amazing.
4 to 5 million people come yearly.
And you said you termed it a place of pilgrimage,
yes.
Which is probably a good way to think about it.
Well, there could be some who come who are curious.
Yeah.
I mean, tourists are all over. There's a part of us that's always a tourist, even when we're pilgrims. But I would think the primary reason for people to go into the basilica and the sacred grounds is searching for something of peace or healing or reconciliation. Mm-hmm. And it has the power to have that happen.
Right, and people have various responses to it. I'm thinking of a couple that I know who went there not long ago, and I believe that the wife was very much into it. She went into the baths and so on and drank the water from the taps that are there. Yeah. And her husband, also a very good Catholic and a great believer, really didn't want to do any of that. Mm-hmm. He wasn't interested in going in the baths, or I don't think he wanted to drink the water too much either because of probably fear of diseases or something. So you get, different Catholic pieties. Yes. Here. You get people who simply wouldn't be into it. Although I think that even this fellow would have had his faith strengthened by seeing the individuals take part in the procession, the way the sick are cared for at that time, about the sort of silent reverence that occurs at times. I think he was struck by all of that. But in terms of this other side of it, no, he wasn't really interested in it.
And I honor that. I respect that. There is something there for everyone. And if people can only bring a simple curiosity, then that's okay too. God can work through any means. Mm-hmm. And also we're interacting there with what is a private revelation. The church has supported this. Interestingly, even after 5 years of the apparitions, the church was able to consider that this place and what occurred there was worthy of belief. But never are we mandated. It's not a matter of doctrine that we accept it. So for those who say no thanks, God bless them.
It's part of the richness of the Catholic heritage, and in that regard, all Catholics are selective Catholics. I mean, some are into it and some aren't, and they choose various devotions and so on. I'm thinking of the short story writer Flannery O'Connor, who we remember in her late 30s was diagnosed as having lupus, and some of her friends wanted her to go to Lourdes to try to be cured of that disease, and she resisted that strongly. She didn't want to go there to seek a miracle. Mm-hmm. She wanted, her religious sensibility said that there somehow would be something wrong with that, seeking out a miracle. I think, if my memory serves me correctly, she did eventually go there, however. And as we know, she did die of lupus. I think she was only 39 years old when she died. But again, that represents another side of this thing, of it's almost an embarrassment of richness. I mean, I think part of her thing, she would almost be embarrassed to be cured like this, or to be singled out, or to be special in that kind of way. And I think maybe sometimes the visionaries involved thought of themselves along that line in the great apparitions of the 19th and 20th century, like, why me, or why am I special, or almost embarrassed about the attention that would come their way. So let's look back, Sue, at the events that occurred there, and try to sort this out. I'm very influenced by a book by Sandra Zimars-Swartz, a professor of religion at University of Kansas in Lawrence, called Encountering Mary. It's been well reviewed, and it's put out by Princeton University Press. And I think that it is a marvelous study of the apparitions in the 19th and 20th century. And it's well worth reading. It's a book that you and I have both encountered and tried to work our way through and so on. And I found it to be very helpful.
Yes, likewise.
But, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, just I wish I could meet the dear lady.
Yes,
who's written that.
I've talked to her on the phone, but have never really met her in person. But she one of her interests is to see how these visionaries ended up communicating their message, how the original appearance somehow filtered its way through the mind of the visionary, through the local clergy, through the public, through the devotees that gather around the shrines, and through the whole church. So it's a very objective kind of scientific study. I mean, she doesn't say herself whether she accepts them or rejects them or anything. She's just trying to look at the experience, and she tries to get back to what we might call the original experience, but she also recognizes that that's impossible, that it's always filtered through the accounts and so on, so we don't know really what happened. But I mean, I think that many would say that in this case, at Lourdes in France, we do have a genuine religious experience of some sort. It's very hard to know exactly what that was, but this young girl, Bernadette, who was born, incidentally, January 7th, 1844, just to locate her a little bit. And as you said before, she had a difficult early life filled with misfortune. She wasn't all that healthy. Her family was poor, and so on. And so all the stories about Bernadette that picture her some other way as in an idyllic state and everything going nicely really aren't on target at all.
I think sometimes we do a disservice to the saints by making them too plastic and not knowing that they struggled and coped with so much.
Right, and that's certainly, in her case, true, and there are stories around it sort of sanitize her whole life, and I think you make a good point. It makes it harder to relate to these people, or to think that they're flesh and blood, or deal with life as we have to do it.
Right.
And as you pointed out, she began these experiences February 11th, 1858, and there were these early apparitions, and a characteristic feature of apparitions, she wasn't too sure what she was seeing.
Absolutely. She would say, that one. And I remember seeing in the movie, they would speak about the Holy Virgin, and she would simply say, I never said she was the Holy Virgin. I never asked anyone to follow me here. She was trying to maybe not preserve or defend herself, but others were starting to call it, and we'll speak further. I mean, even when she said later, when Mary said to her, I am the Immaculate Conception, she walks away, I am the Immaculate Conception. She was not an educated woman and didn't know what it meant. Now, it had been declared a dogma just prior to that, so perhaps it was in conversation, but this apparition really gives a solidity to the dogma that had been declared, I believe, 4 years prior to this.
That's right, 1854, one of the two great Marian dogmas that have been declared by popes officially. That's the Immaculate Conception doctrine, and then also the Assumption, the doctrine that we have proclaimed in 1950 by Pope Pius XII. This was proclaimed by Pope Pius IX in 1854. In fact, all these original apparitions were in the 19th century were part of the reign of Pius IX. I mean, people know him for other reasons, like the Syllabus of Errors that he issued in the 1860s, condemning much of what went on in the modern world. And here he is connected in with the appearance of Mary at La Salette earlier, and then also this one here in 1854 Bernadette.
Interesting, as Bernadette did go, following the first one, she set a pattern to walk to the grotto carrying a candle, would pray the rosary, would stop for a while and stare at a spot above the grotto, experience whatever that was, then resume the rosary, blow out the candle, and leave. And Mary presents herself in different images at the different apparitions. In this one, she was a beautiful woman wearing a white dress with a blue sash. Mm-hmm. And it
is a very good point you make in these apparitions. If you go back to the apparition to Juan Diego in Mexico, there the Virgin had Latin features.
Yes.
And it corresponded to the women that he would have known in his own culture. Mm-hmm. This is a very interesting phenomenon. We got to remember that religious experience is always filtered through our own categories, through our own experience. This is true for any of us. I mean, it's not just these visionaries, but however we perceive God is always dictated by our history, our personality, our character, the way our consciousness has been shaped, the culture in which we live, the historical times that are all around us. So all of that really is determines how we end up talking about whatever deeper religious experiences we have. So in this case, Bernadette's Virgin had a very distinctive characteristic mm-hmm. that she would recognize and understand.
It's interesting. As you say that, I think of all of the Christmas cribs that are put out, and sometimes we see some that look just like us, and then we see others that are done Oriental or African American, and everyone has a right. In fact, Mary was a Middle East woman with a darker brown complexion. I remember when I was in the Holy Land, in Nazareth, as a matter of fact, I took a picture of a woman walking down the street. I thought, that's what Mary might have looked like as she went to the well. So
you had a better chance that way than saying a fair-skinned woman that we might know in our own country here.
Right.
Better shot at historical accuracy. But what we're dealing with here, I think, it's not really based on historical accuracy. What we're dealing with is religious experiences that get shaped by cultural factors and history and so on. And so let's go back to another feature of this. I like the way you described that. It's the way she walked. That was her sort of regular routine, right, when these apparitions would happen. And as you described it, she'd be saying the rosary and look up at a particular mm-hmm. spot in the grotto, and that is a characteristic to us that has been true in other apparitions throughout our own modern times.
It's a moment of ecstasy, of total oblivion of anything taking place around. In some cases, in Bernadette's case, her body was totally immobile. I mean, if anyone had come to try to shake her, she was caught in something that I think we can only imagine unless we're gifted someday by this ourselves.
And then now crowds began to come.
Oh,
this is another feature. So they're watching all this. While this happens, they can see her fall into this ecstasy, and they're trying to figure out what to make of it all, and they're looking for some sign so that they can participate.
Right. And the simplicity of her saying, I am the Immaculate Conception, and that's all she said. But soon after, embellishments followed among the people in their euphoria, and one of them even said that Mary had said, I am the Virgin of the Immaculate Conception, and I want a church built here. Mm-hmm. A far cry from the simplicity of I am
the original
the Immaculate
statement.
Conception.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And as you pointed out, that statement, I am the Immaculate Conception, this is being said in this apparition in 1858, and it was in 1854 that Pius IX proclaimed this doctrine. So again, it's an indication this is in the air. Mm-hmm. It's part of what would be in the culture at that time. And then, what about this spring that appeared? That's another thing. Bernadette began digging in the ground, and evidently a spring appeared. And that is when the vision told her, and the Mary told her to tell the priest, local clergy, that a chapel should be built there, and people should come in procession. Well, now we have this huge basilica, and people coming for this gigantic procession that's held each day, or maybe more than once in a day.
Oh, well, as I said, when I was
there, I remember
the
candlelight procession in the evening myself.
That's the most remarkable one. Yeah. But the one that I went in the afternoon was the Corpus Christi procession. A large canopy and the Eucharist were being reverently taken around the grounds. But just backing up, when Bernadette obediently went to the local priest and asked the parish priest to help build a chapel because Our Lady said so, he smiled at her and said, will the Blessed Virgin pay for it? Where are the monies for this? But it has come to pass, and
The practical question was asked,
Yes.
however,
Now, of course, Bernadette was given psychiatric examinations as well. Something like this is not the ordinary run-of-the-mill, and she came through it beautifully.
Let's talk a little bit more about the rest of her life
Okay.
and so on, and what she did. She became a member of a religious order, and that's common to the visionaries, the seers, that they move in that direction of wanting to consecrate their life and live it out within religious community.
Right. She spent about 12 years in the convent. Her religious name was Sister Marie Bernard, or Bernard. I'm not sure how she would have pronounced it, but she was a mere 36 years old. And what I thought was beautiful in the reading...
36 when?
When she died. She was only
yeah.
36 when she died.
Yes.
And she was canonized on December 8th of 1933. I'm certain that was not a happenstance. That must have been chosen because it's the
Surely.
Feast of the Immaculate
Yes.
Conception. But I don't know when this occurred. Her body was exhumed and it was intact. So she was among the saints that was preserved from decay. And I believe her body remains at the convent where she did live for at least about 12 years. So.
And her life during that time, was it fairly peaceful or together? Or
right now I'm recalling the movie of Bernadette as I'm reflecting on it with you here, Jim. I know the Mother Superior said to the nuns, "She will come, she will tell the story once, and that it will be closed. It will not be opened again."
She won't have to be telling everyone
That's
all
right.
the time of
So
what has happened.
what the balance of those 12 years was, I don't know, but that which was occurring back in Lourdes was proliferating and mushrooming, and again, is a sacred place that we can, if we're privileged, opt to share in today.
Let's look a little bit, Sue, at one of the aspects of all of this, and that is the healings that occur in relationship to this. That is part of the great phenomenon at Lourdes. Many claims of cures, some of them authenticated. I mean, sometimes they have doctors examine
Right.
people before and after and so on, and so you have a lot of that going on. I was recounting that idea of Flannery O'Connor before, not wanting to have the cure and not wanting to go to Lourdes for that reason, but as surely is connected with this great shrine, and it's a interesting phenomenon. You used a broader term before, broadened out the notion of healing, and saying that anybody who went there could find some sort of healing. I like that as a beginning approach to all of this, that the message of Lourdes has to do with reconciliation, of becoming more peaceful with our own selves, of dealing better in our relationships, healing the brokenness that occurs there, trying to heal the rifts that we find within family life and within nations and within the world. So there's a broader sense of healing that can be used, and I think it opens up the experience to more people. I mean, some people who aren't into those kind of miracles or don't believe in them or believe that they ought not be sought or talked about that much. They sort of go with the biblical notion of Jesus, don't be looking for these dramatic signs. So we have people like that who can be drawn into at least an initial effort to understand the meaning of Lourdes by looking at this phenomenon of healing. I thought of that myself when I was there, of the good spirit that's created and these people walking on caring for the sick, pushing them in the carts and part of the procession. There was a real loving, healing spirit that was unleashed there.
Right, and I mean it's a highly organized system, which it has to be when you're dealing with the thousands and thousands who come even in a day's time. And there are those who don't go into the baths, who stay outside, and their ministry is to sing and to praise God, that if it be God's holy will for any individual, that a miraculous cure could occur. You know, we don't stand in control of what God is going to do within. And I don't remember seeing a place, perhaps you did, where they would have crutches or wheelchairs or canes.
I've always heard that, and when I was there, I did not see that. But that must exist because I've talked to many people who tell me that is. But when I personally was there, I do not recall that at all.
I know up at St. Anne de Beaupré in Quebec, just outside Quebec, I remember the impact of that. But be that as it may, dramatic cures can...
Yes. The physical cures are also claimed to have happened in Lourdes and in relationship to all of that. And I think many people have been taken by those. And of course it relates to your own work as a pastoral minister in a hospital setting, and the whole idea of cures, of praying with people who are sick. I mean,
Right.
I think that very often those of us who have attended those who are ill find that praying has an amazing power. I mean, even if we don't see a precise cure, but part of the dynamics of it surely is that when people become more peaceful inwardly and more open to the curative powers around, that good things can
Right.
happen. I have no doubt, and I think modern medicine is showing this, that when people are in cancer treatment, they tell them imagine good things or think positively, and this has an effect. And I believe you could look at the cures connected with these Marian apparitions in that light as well, as opening oneself up to whatever curative powers the body has, the inner spirit has, and in which the Great Spirit has that engulfs all of us.
I do see that very much with the patients that I'm privileged to interact with. I mean, just many different degrees of faith, many degrees of openness to the Lord. And as we hold hands and pray and commit ourselves to God for whatever healing happens, I haven't seen anyone spring out of bed. I don't await that. But the calmness, the peace that does fill people when you're open to God's Spirit has no limits, Jim.
I think that's well said indeed, Sue. And so we've been looking here at the apparition of Mary to Bernadette at Lourdes, taking us back to 1858, a time of great interest in Mary, a time right after the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception was proclaimed, the idea that Mary was sinless from the first moment of her own conception, the meaning of that Immaculate Conception. And that we've tried to see the results of all of this, crowds drawn to Lourdes, and the modern phenomenon, your own experience of being there and seeing faith in action, and then suggesting that really there's a healing that flows out of all of that, a power of the Marian apparitions to heal divisions wherever they are to be found.